Welcome to The Spawn Chunks, episode number 347 for Monday, April 28th, 2025. This is a podcast all about Minecraft, available across all major podcast platforms, including a video version on YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing wherever you're listening to this. My name is Jonny, but the internet knows me as Pixelriffs, and joining me, as always, is a very movie-centric Joel Duggan. Hi, Joel.
Hello. It is fantastic to be back on a Monday talking about Minecraft, but we were just talking about our experiences in the cinema in the render distance, which is the extended version of the podcast that our patrons get every single week. You can go to patreon.com/thespawnchunks to support the show, get an extra 25 to 30 minutes of content every single week in your podcaster of choice. This show we talked about Star Wars Andor, which is on my big screen at home, but also the most recent experience that I've had in the theater, as well as Johnny's first time going to see IMAX and talking about the movie Sinners, which he has seen now twice. So if you want to hear more about that, you can check out the render distance. It's at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. We also do things like the monthly Minecraft Hangout that happened this past Saturday. We hung out with patrons in our Discord. They shared images and stories about what they've been doing in Minecraft, very similar to the login that we do every single week, but with our patrons. So that is now up and available for patrons on the Patreon page. And coming up next month in May, we do a quarterly hangout, and that's where Johnny and I sit down and talk about the downloads, the numbers, the listeners, the YouTube metrics, all that kind of stuff, the behind the scenes of what's going into the Spawn Chunk. So if that is something that interests you, check out patreon.com/thespawnchunks.
A lot of interesting stuff happened the last few months as well, both on YouTube and on Spotify, so excited to share some of that with the audience. In the meantime, excited to share what we've been up to with our Minecraft weeks. So Joel, why don't you kick us off?
So I have been puttering around in West Hill, going down the in-game Minecraft book to-do list, which I cannot recommend enough. It's just so nice, both of us as a streamer, but also as just a Minecraft player, to have something in your hand, in your inventory, in-game. You don't have to tab out to a list or like a document. You don't have to show it to the stream. You can just open up the book and people can see what your notes are. They can see what's next. They can see what your decision process is in terms of what you're going to do next. And I've just been going down and checking off a couple of things that were easy. I didn't have a long time to stream on Saturday, so I thought, I'm going to go through and I'm going to just pick out the things that are going to be easy to accomplish this stream. And some of the things that I noticed when I was going around the last few weeks and replacing all the tables and chairs models with the new ones in Tables and Chairs 2 were a few places I missed. Like I missed the top of the South Tower. I missed a little basement in the western quarter. And there was a secret tunnel that I had put in near the bridge over the canal that I wanted to kind of go back and fix up. It was fine, but it had come out long before candles and deep slate, and I had done a very basic texture job on it. And I thought this needs a little bit more love. As I was walking around checking things, I noticed it. So the first thing I did was the little basement. It was just a teeny tiny little like 4x3 basement in a house that was completely untouched. And I retextured the wall. I threw in like, for me, it's a note block, but I've got it retextured as a crate and like a bee's nest and some mini blocks and barrels, things like that. So that was pretty easy to do. And then I moved on to the South Tower attic, I guess we'll call it. Just the top of the tower had nothing in it. And it's not a house, so you're not putting like beds and necessarily people sleeping up there. So I just thought, well, this will just be storage for the south gate. And so that's what I did. I did some things with the note blocks that are textured like crates. I also have some mini blocks of ores kicking around. So I piled up some coal and some iron ore regular blocks and then put like a mini coal block on there. And it looks kind of like stones and other materials that they've kind of gathered from the surrounding countryside, and they're storing them up there. And a few other things too that are really fun and vanilla, like without any kind of extra stuff. It's just like a slab with signs around it to make it look like a basket or a crate that's got an open top. I do put like little lowercase O's on my signs to kind of make them look like they've been nailed into the sides of things. Putting a 4x4 cube of stripped oak wood wrapped in signs, make it look like a really big crate, and that's all vanilla. So things like that have been really fun to put together. So it feels like it's got a use now. It's not been forgotten about, because it's one thing I didn't want to do is just like have the insides of these giant towers be just like empty spaces. Like I wanted them to have stairs and floors and purpose and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's great the shots you've got in here of the secret passageways and stuff. Like, you were worried about the brightness of this because you were talking about having a new monitor and worried about it being bright. There's so much atmosphere to be had in like a dark hallway with just a single candle lighting it, and I think that's one of the things candles have really brought to the game is the versatility of lighting spaces like this. You're not as worried about mob spawns and that kind of stuff, or like the candles provide enough to just light, a 4 or 5 block strip of this hallway. So I think just having a couple of candles in there really adds a layer of atmosphere to these underground passages that they might not have had before.
Thanks, man. It was really fun to do. And again, that passage was definitely put in before candles were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go back and light it and not have to use lanterns, even soul lanterns, would be bright enough that it would feel quite lit. And I did this before on a passage that, not necessarily a secret passage, it's just like an access passage under the west gate, just a way to get from one tower to the other without having to go outside. And again, I didn't want to light it completely. I just wanted to have it be spawn proof. So it's kind of serving a game function, but also giving you that kind of like eerie underground kind of vibe. And with this one, I wanted to be able to see around corners and kind of like guide you, but I didn't want the candles to be visible. So I had to make sure that the candles couldn't be seen when you're looking down the hallway. So they always had to be around a corner. And one of the tricks that I was using, I decided to texture the walls of the tunnel with cobbled deep slate and tuff. And tuff is something that works well with cobbled deep slate, but in a darker area, the tuff really stands out. It's a lot brighter. Outside in the sunshine, it's not so bad. Like it's still lighter, but it feels more part of the landscape. So what I did was I put the tuff blocks across from the candles. Mm-hmm. So even without shaders on or any kind of light casting effects, you get the idea that the candles are casting a light on the wall opposite them. And it was really effective. And even in the dim lighting, you could kind of see like, oh, that's where the tunnel goes around a corner, because I did it there too. So light coming down one kind of L angle on the tunnel would create like a bounce on that wall, but it also visually separated out the deep slate that you were seeing going down the tunnel from the blocks that are going left at the end. But you put a tough block in there and you can see the turn. Mm-hmm. And so it really was a fun technique to kind of map out the space visually and go from there. But thanks. Yeah, I really like how dark it is. Like it feels like kind of like a smuggling tunnel. It goes to the back door of the warehouse where there's like an access door behind a crate. It goes to the basement of the inn in the eastern section of town. And there's a trapdoor in the porter's shop, the barrel shop. So you think like barrels, an inn where people are coming and going, and access to under the bridge, where ferries or boats could go by in the middle of the night and possibly get some goods, in and out in secret. And it's just a fun little Easter egg that it was space that wasn't being used. So I'll dig a tunnel. Why not, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I can only imagine, recently on the Misadventures SMP, they played a game of hide and seek in the central town of Maryport, which I think if I had to guess is probably about half the size of West Hill. I can only imagine what would happen if could take all day if you had a hide and seek game in West Hill with all of the secret passages and crawl spaces and fun stuff that you've worked into all of these little details of the buildings.
It's funny, we had a comment in chat on Saturday saying I don't know how you find your way around in here. I am lost. And I'm watching you take paths that have been built and decorated, and you're going in one place and out the other, and you're just everywhere. I was I can't remember what I had for lunch last Tuesday, but I can tell you how to get around West Hill because I've been building it for 4 years. And what's funny is it's not even a community project. I've had some wonderfully helpful server mates drop off some materials, but I have placed every block in this build. So when you're the architect, the amount of space that it holds in my brain is a little bit scary. Mm-hmm. There are some places obviously that I've forgotten. I had to go back and decorate them. So I don't have everything kind of pictured in my brain, but I absolutely have a map. I know where things are going and where things are connected. And sometimes I'll even say as I'm narrating what I'm doing on stream, be I think there was a door back. Oh yeah, look at that secret passage. If I were me 2 years ago, this is where I would put a secret door. Walk around the corner, and there it is.
Yeah. It's great to know that I'm the same person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have moments like that. Sometimes I'll go back and just for to jog my memory, watch some old streams that I did of games ages and ages ago, back when I was playing not even Minecraft, the Final Fantasy games or something. And a character in it will say something, and in my head I'll make a joke, and then out loud on the stream from 5 or 6 years ago, I make the same joke, and I'm well, I haven't changed. I'm basically exactly still the same guy. So yeah, it's great to know that some of that stuff still feeds in, and like all of the logical decisions that you made back in the day are still kind of very much present in the logic that you're using today.
Yeah, so that's it for me. I only had time to fix a few things. So there's still a list of things to do, but it is getting much smaller. So I'm excited to kind of wrap this up in the next couple of months as we build through the to-do list. What have you been doing in Minecraft?
So I've spent my entire week on Misadventures, actually. I mean to make a few more Craft Mine videos, but Misadventures has been holding my attention for a couple of reasons. First of which was that I wanted to get out an episode in which I acquired every rideable mob in the server so far, at least the ones we have discovered. And you heard my saga of how I bred a ton of goats in order to get hold of the goat mount last week. This week it was the turn of the rats. And there are 3 of them that are available from vendors in the sewer dungeon. There are 3 rats that you can basically go up and talk to, and they will sell you a rat mount if you have enough reputation with the rats as a faction, which means you need to go and find some of the rats and feed them. So a lot of people had been killing sheep at Molly's sheep farm for this, and it turns out later that killing the sheep decreased your reputation with Molly so that she wouldn't sell you the sheep mount. I had no such trouble with this because I'd already gone to the resource world to get a bunch of my food, and I hadn't really jumped on board the rat craze when it was initially discovered. So now coming back to it and deciding I needed to get at least one of the rat mounts is what I was aiming for, I took a slightly different approach to the problem. I decided to do something similar to what I'd done with the goats and use the resource world to my advantage. So I went and gathered kelp, because obviously dried kelp you can gather in really large quantities just by getting the plant from a nearby ocean biome. You'll come home with a full inventory of it and you won't have made a dent in what actually grows in a natural ocean. So I brought that home, added it to like an automatic smoking setup, did that maybe 3 or 4 times when we had a resource world spawn that was really close to an ocean biome, and I just let this smoker run basically overnight. There were other people logging in, walking around Maryport. I had it sort of installed upstairs in my apartment in Maryport, and so I was able to just let it go all night. And I turned all of the dried kelp into kelp blocks, which meant that you could uncraft them from a kelp block again and get 9 times the amount of inventory that you brought in with you. So I took in 10 stacks of kelp blocks, and I would have ended up with basically 90 stacks worth of dried kelp from that, which was going to be more than enough to feed the rats however much they wanted. I didn't get an exact number, but I think I went through about 2 stacks worth of kelp blocks, and from that I was able to buy all 3 of the rat mounts. So nice. I was really happy with that as a solve for the problem, because evidently a few other people had gone through with like a round of mutton 5 or 6 times before it would actually sell them any of the rat mounts. So from that I was able to buy all 3. The only other rideable mob we know about that I don't have already is the skeleton dog, or the skeletal wolf that you have to fight in the Lost Crypt dungeon. There's only 1 wolf per attempt, so you have to keep going back into the dungeon, and it has about a 1 in 1,000 chance to drop. So only 2 people have managed to acquire it as of the time of this recording, and yeah, that's just been a pure luck thing. Mythical Sausage got it very early, and I believe Shubble now has it as well, and she got hold of it incredibly late in the potential 1,000 attempts that you have to make to get hold of it. But that has just been a matter of like going in and running Lost Crypt multiple times on streams. I think I got about 60 or so runs done the other day. I have like an on-screen counter for it just so people don't have to keep asking me how many attempts I've made. And yeah, I'm just going to do that for the foreseeable future, I think. But that's what Chopping Tuesdays are going to be for a little while at least. In the meantime, to keep myself from going absolutely batty with the amount of times I have to do that, I have been doing some building in a creative test world to get started on some early designs for a floating ruin of sorts. It's going to be uninhabited for now, and maybe I'll sort of work some ideas into it in future. But my idea on the server was to create this sort of Sky Pirate empire and have this ruin of sorts that the Sky Pirates were currently raiding. And I wanted to do a lot of that with red sandstone, as I've mentioned in previous weeks. So I've just started on little ideas for small storage houses and things like that that are going to be floating in the sky, primarily composed of red sandstone, but using a palette of similar blocks. There's a bit of granite in there, there's some acacia wood, some orange terracotta, and then a bit of other terracotta and glazed terracotta for accents, plus some appropriate wood types, jungle wood and that kind of thing. And so I've got this floating storehouse, just been working on a little bit of interior detail for that. I found out, by the way, that decorated pots work really well with pressure plates. If you add a pressure plate of any wood type onto the top of it, it just looks like, a seal or some kind of like decorative band that can maybe divide them up by color if they have different contents or something like that in the fiction of the world. So
Nice.
really enjoyed discovering that. I've got a couple of those with like these collars of warped wood and, gold, because you can make gold and iron pressure plates and stuff as well. So I was just working on a few details of that. I am once again going to make it more difficult for myself by having conduits be one of those things that in the fiction of this world provides a power source or like basically a flotation source. So underneath this thing, a conduit is sort of floating underneath the whole structure, surrounded by glass panes with this sort of mystical, magical kind of blue feel that imply that that's what's keeping these buildings aloft. And by setting up something like that, I can just add a small detail to any of the other structures I end up making, and that will provide something along the lines of the lore of why these floating buildings are still staying up there. And we don't have a great deal of like floating islands and other terrain like that in this world. It's all generated with terralith, so the landscape is contiguous and mostly free of the kind of typical Minecraft floating island stuff. And so I'm thinking about designing it so that the houses are floating rather than them being on floating chunks of terrain. And if I can find a link to it, I will share a really cool inspiration image that I found on Instagram of a skyblock base that was like this. And sorry, I'm forgetting the name right now, but I will do my best to find the source and cite that in the show notes this week.
I really like this build of the dripstone hanging out underneath like the granite and the terracotta at the bottom. It's a really cool gradient, and the copper grates work so well with the red sandstone and the terracotta. Like, just such a cool vibe. And I like the decision to ditch the floating island, because we've seen that a lot, right? Like it's not it's still a cool idea, but it's not a brand new idea. But to have the houses float and kind of have some sort of mystical, magical thing underneath them is really, really cool. And I see what you mean about the decorated pots. Like, it really makes me want to be able to paint decorated pots, like in the same way that we can paint signs and have them be different colors. I feel like if you could have the decorated pot get your pattern on it that you want, your pottery sherd, but then if you wanted it to have like gold inlay and then have that gold collar on it, like there would be a lot of decorative possibilities to make your build different from other people's. And even this is a lot, in terms of I'm looking at like a bamboo collar. I really like looks like it's maybe spruce and acacia look like close enough to the terracotta color that they really almost look seamless as part of the pot. And even that would be something that would make your pots stand out from one another, but also other people on the server that might be using pots in their decorations. So really, really cool effect. I really enjoy that kind of, those little discoveries. I think are really fun in Minecraft when you think that this thing has got a hitbox as high as the model, and then it turns out it's actually just a little bit less, and you can actually overlap stuff. It's such a rare thing in Minecraft, but when you can do it, it's really effective.
Yeah, and decorated pots are really versatile for stuff like that, surprisingly so. You can include them as like pillars in stuff. If the top and bottom is concealed, then you can make it look like just a thinner section of a wall or something like that. Going back to what you were saying about the copper grates, I added those sort of to kind of throw them in a little bit, but then I realized that if they're on the corners of the building, the way I put them there, it sort of adds to this notion of airiness and lightness because they're transparent and you can see through them if you're looking at it from a certain angle. And so I like the idea that by installing stuff like copper grates, maybe this is like a lattice work that the rest of the building is built over, and so it naturally has this hollow feel to make it lighter, or maybe they've replaced it with lighter sections so that the wind can pass through and it's more aerodynamic and it isn't, buffeting around too much living up there. So I want to do a bit more stuff with that, and obviously let some of them age so I can mix in a few different kind of color palettes and not just have everything everywhere be red sandstone. But I like the idea of there being contrast in some of them as they've aged as well, keeping the copper color in there. And I don't know quite how we can get honeycomb on this server yet, because we don't really have traditional like bee farms and stuff in the RPG overworld. So I'd have to check with the others and see if they've got any supplies they can lend me to wax stuff and keep it as is. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this as a build style so far, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of it as it continues.
Any plans to do any ruins where like the roof is missing or there's a wall missing, and or maybe even have the wall on the ground, like below the build?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I want these to be
Nice.
connected by bridges and stuff, and so there are going to be some areas that link to larger hubs, and the hubs sort of, head off in different directions. So any of those could link to, there might be a ruined structure, some sort of like temple or, worship site that's fallen into disrepair, a couple of broken down houses. And I want there to be somewhere, some way of people fishing, because changing fishing loot tables has been a really inventive way of allowing people to get hold of resources that we can't get because there aren't structures. So I think at Catherine Elizabeth's base, you can now fish for prismarine, which you can't get from the resource world because structures don't generate there. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, like there's going to be a few more interesting ways of getting hold of some of that stuff. The Hearts of the Sea for the conduits that I want to use are obtainable via a fishing quest in Maryport, but you can also get the Nautilus shells there too. So there's a lot of little things to think about in terms of how this server is different from the traditional survival experience, but yeah, it's going to be really fun to put all of this stuff together and collaborate on it with the team. Moving on to the Mojang team and what they've been up to this week, we have a Java Edition snapshot for you. This is Java Edition snapshot 25W17A, which says, after a long weekend, we are back with another snapshot. This week, we are moving the Locator Bar out of experiments. Try it out and continue to give us your feedback over at feedback.minecraft.net. We have also made some improvements to the Realms UI, including region selection for your world. Happy mining. So new features in 25W17A include an option to reduce the cloud range, and the Locator Bar being moved out of the Experiments tab into default gameplay. The Locator Bar, if you're not familiar, is a new UI element that displays the direction of other players in the world. If there are no other players in the world, the Experience Bar will display as normal. If another player is in the world and that player is not hiding, then the Experience Bar will appear when experience is gained, otherwise the Locator Bar will display in the same area. Facing other players within a 120-degree range will display those players as colored indicators on the Locator Bar. Other players that are above and below the screen will also display an up or down arrow with their indicator. The indicator will change to different sized icons depending on how far away the other player is, and the colored indicators are randomized for each player, but servers can modify the colors of indicators with the /waypoint command. Players on a team will override the default indicator color with their team color as well. Multiplayer servers can toggle the Locator Bar with the Locator Bar game rule. Players can hide by crouching, wearing a mob head or a carved pumpkin, or by using a potion of invisibility. And players in spectator mode will not be visible on the Locator Bar to players in other game modes, but they are visible to each other. A couple of other changes in this snapshot. They've made improvements to the Realms configuration screen and introduced a region preference setting that allows for more granular control over what region a realm is started in. In technical changes, the datapack version is now 74 and the resource pack version is now 58. This has added a server-authoritative waypoint broadcasting system for controlling the Locator Bar behavior for players. The snapshot article for 25W17A on Minecraft.net goes into the technical details on the datapack and resource changes, including game rules and waypoints for the Locator Bar and block tags for the Happy Ghast and Dried Ghast. So if you want more information about that, go and check out the changelog article for yourself. Fixed bugs of note in 25W17A include dispensers being unable to equip harnesses onto Happy Ghasts. Happy Ghasts don't avoid pathfinding into dangerous blocks. The rarity of the Dried Ghast was inconsistent with its crafting ingredients. Clouds didn't render at render distances 2 and 3. Lead shift right-clicking didn't work on boats with chests, and cloud rendering had a considerable impact on performance as of 25W16A. Those have all been fixed, along with a full list of bug fixes in this snapshot. You can find those at the Minecraft.net changelog that should be linked in our show notes this week over at thespawnchunks.com.
Well, I, for one, am happy to see some game rules for the Locator Bar, as I don't think we'll have a lot of use for it on the Citadel. There's only a handful of us, and very rarely, because of time zones and work schedules, are we on at the same time. And if we are, and we're playing together, we're just on Discord. So, like, it's not necessarily something we're going to be using to locate players and do anything like that. Every now and again, there's a mini game, and it could be fun to use the team aspect of it. Like, we've done an ABBA cabing event, and it would be kind of cool to split people up into teams so that you can kind of see, oh, there's a person from the red team going by, that kind of stuff, if you want to be mischievous or something like that. But I don't see us using it a lot. I am happy to see that it doesn't really engage unless a player is close by. So like if the Locator Bar is on and I'm in West Hill, which is 10,000 blocks from just about anybody, then it probably won't even register. I don't know whether the location bar will come on. Sorry, Locator Bar will come on when that other person logs in, despite the fact that they're nowhere near me, and their dot will just not appear, or what, or what. So in a way, I guess that could be a good indicator that someone's logged on. But at the same time, on our server, people would just normally say hi. So
Yeah.
like it's not that hard to find it when somebody else is online. I'm curious about how people are going to be using this, and specifically people that are not going to be using it on a regular basis. Like if it's an event thing, great. But I feel like having it be something that could be turned off would be great, because I don't necessarily need that in my gameplay. At the same time, I can't remember the last time I looked at my XP bar, other than like the other day I didn't log out and I died. I think phantoms got me, and I didn't lose anything because I didn't really have much on me, and because there's no one around, all my stuff was just right there. But I noticed when I looked down, like, oh, because I have no experience, the experience bar isn't there. But that's the first time in ages I've ever bothered to notice it. Like I really only ever look at the hot bar. I don't really look at the experience bar. Or like, I should go repair something. Do I have enough experience to repair something? Oh yeah, I do. Like this should be fine. So I don't know. Like it's one of those things where it's not high on my list. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in all of our emails and chat on this show, I don't remember a big ask for it. Like I'm not sure that players were champing at the bit for a locator bar. Now, I don't travel in PvP circles, so it could be a much larger conversation in that area. Mini games for downloads on the DLC from the Minecraft marketplace, like there could be a much larger demand in those circles, and I'm just not part of it.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I rarely test snapshots in multiplayer, so I haven't had much opportunity to use the locator bar yet, but I think the most important thing about it is that we can turn it on and off now. I think that was a highly requested feature once it was out there, that the locator bar was being introduced, and I think it's good for like the type of servers that I watch frequently are typically cooperative multiplayer servers, folks like Hermitcraft, and I can't imagine them wanting to have a locator bar on constantly. I can imagine them wanting to use it for stuff like recently, where they had a bit of a PvP feel with people trying to like banish other people into exile and that kind of thing. So I worry that it would become distracting on multiplayer servers otherwise, but it's really good to read in this changelog that they have basically a true-false toggle for whether it appears at all. I think it'd be great to hear from some players who are familiar with PvP as an environment, how they expect it to affect PvP, if that's a good thing for you, if it's a bad thing, because I know on some multiplayer PvP games, you think about like the Call of Duty kind of arena shooter style things, you won't always have other people popping up on a radar for you. You won't always be able to know where those people are, and it's about encountering them in the environment rather than checking your HUD to see whether or not there's somebody nearby. So I think that's going to be, interesting to see how it affects general PvP, and if the PvP community adapts to use some of the features that allow you to hide when the locator bar is enabled. Like, do invisibility potions suddenly come up through the meta as something that's a lot more effective, both at concealing you in 3D space and concealing you from the locator bar when you're just trying to gather resources or whatever you're trying to do on your PvP map? Likewise, the player heads and mob heads of it all, like, is it going to be more common that you'll see carved pumpkins and skeleton skulls and stuff available to players to prevent them from getting ambushed by other players knowing where they are? I think there's some fun stuff to be had there, so it would be really great to hear from PvP folks if you want to email the show and let us know how the locator bar you expect to affect your gameplay going forward.
The only thing that I pulled out besides the locator bar was clouds, and the indication that there were some render options added, but also some performance issues that have been addressed as well. And I don't know what that spells for Java moving into potentially getting vibrant visuals, in terms of if clouds are causing performance issues across various machines, then I don't know whether vibrant visuals are going to be like the default for machines on Java, whether they're going to be on by default, whether you're going to want to like somehow scan the system or ask permission to share your system specs with Minecraft, and then it will just decide, oh, you have a good enough machine that this shouldn't be a factor for you, or vice versa, like, message the player or somehow indicate like, hey, if you go to check your specs and give like a feedback in the menu, like turn on Java, or not Java, turn on vibrant visuals and may affect performance on your machine, or light, medium, heavy. Like I'm not sure how you might be able to do it, because shaders for Java right now, you can download different versions that have different intensities and different things that will affect your performance.
I know that when RTX was introduced on Bedrock Edition, they definitely had a couple of like warning messages and stuff that would pop up if you tried to increase your render distance beyond a certain point. It would say, hey, like this is the point at which you're probably going to start to see performance drop off. So while obviously it's a bit of a difficult thing to imagine, knowing how people's hardware is going to differ with regards to performance for vibrant visuals, with Java Edition being playable across such a broad range of computer hardware, I do think there's going to be some ways they can indicate, hey, this is probably going to tax your system more than expected. We're also looking at vibrant visuals being rendered on a completely different CPU thread, as we discussed in previous weeks. Like, they're refactoring all of their rendering code right now. So for a start, the fact that clouds caused a bit more performance impact than they should have might just have been an oversight. It might have been a symptom of them working on the rendering code and some things being programmed differently to others. It's a field that I don't know a great deal about, but I think it's potentially still something that they can address in the short term like that. And while they're working towards the long-term impact Vibrant Visuals is going to have, then they have other solutions in the pipeline for that.
Moving on into our email, if you'd like to email the show, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. Please keep the emails short and to the point if you can. It does help get them on the show. And also indicate if you're a patron in the subject line. It also helps us sort out the email into different folders and keep tabs on who's messaging the show from where. The first email is from, I want to say, Jedidu, but if there was a space in there, I'd be very tempted to say Jedi-do. So just Star Wars, I see you there. The subject is Hostile Chain. Hi, Pix and Joel. I was listening to episode 346, Happy Ghasts Help You Haul, and I had this wild idea. What if we could leash hostile mobs too? Maybe not with leads, but with chains instead. I know it might not make much sense at first and may cause absolute chaos, but it also sounds like a lot of fun. Chaining creepers to cats and golems to illagers, having bouncing guardians as farm decoration, and so much more. Ravagers in particular feel like the perfect candidate for this. They're big and wild and also kind of writable. Please, Mojang, add this feature. Now is your time. Just imagine being able to leash and transport Ravagers, setting up custom raids, or Ravager bombing your friends with ghasts, or even having a pet Ravager stamping around your base and being airlifted by a happy ghast. I actually drew a piece of fan art inspired by this idea, a kind of Beastmaster concept with a player wrangling Ravagers in a fortified pen and exploring the world by combining air and land travel. Maybe it's too wild for vanilla, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea. Jadidu panically fell off a happy ghast whilst trying to escape a not-so-happy, very hostile Ravager.
I, for one, do like the idea of having a Ravager as like a chain chomp, like the Mario enemy, just somewhere in a Minecraft base. And I definitely know a couple of folks from our hangout this weekend, specifically Scotsman, who's been building a pillager-themed base for quite a while, would definitely enjoy the notion of being able to chain up Ravagers, as I believe Scotsman put a Ravager racetrack into a base fairly recently. So there's, I think, a lot of like-minded people out there who are very interested in the concept of Ravagers being able to do a little bit more for players in the game.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would ever make it into vanilla, but I can see it being a fun mini game or a mod. I think that would be a good way to address it. I feel like chaining a hostile mob or the ability to leash a hostile mob would be probably too easy of a way to eliminate it as a threat, right? Like if you've got a creeper by your base and you just kind of like lasso it and then lasso it to a fence post, and then it can't creep up on you anymore. You're just going to keep it there. And at that point, you know, whether it's a skeleton or a zombie, while it would be kind of funny to have the zombie like tied to a tree or something like that as it constantly tries to like chase you around, there could also be some tactical implications for that. Like if you have a zombie with a limited range, he's always going to walk over the same blocks. Like there could be some interesting stuff there. But at the same time, I feel like you just immediately eliminate the threat. But then also over time, like what happens if this happens en masse? Like what happens if you leash 25 zombies and reach, a hostile mob cap in range, and then all of a sudden you've got like a spawn proof area just from leashing zombies to defense posts. So I feel like it's a little bit of an overreach in terms of what could happen, but I do like the idea of using chains as well as leashes for things. Like I feel like there could be some sort of, I don't know, assignment of like bad things, using a chain in the nether for something that you couldn't do in the overworld, or using chains or something like that. I don't know. Like right now we can kind of fake it and have a chain look like it's holding up a block, but it doesn't move. It doesn't swing. There's nothing like that. So I kind of wonder if in future there could be some interesting thing where, imagine right now with leads, when you leash an animal, it has that elasticity to it. Chains don't have that in real life, obviously.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a different length of chain. But it would be really interesting if that would be the differentiator between a lead and a chain, which is that the chain could have a specific length. So if you use, like say you've got 6 links of chain in your inventory and you use that to attach to something, then it's going to stay a specific length, allow movement, but not allow any movement beyond that. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of if the thing or the mob backed towards the anchor point, then of course you'd want the chain to get shorter, but it would have a limit as to how long it could get. I don't know. I feel like it could be interesting to try and have like verticality or things hanging at different heights that are moving or movable, as opposed to just hanging there static, and people have to imagine the motion, especially if we could at any point get into something like a hoist. And again, not very practical. It's always going to be faster just to pick something up and carry it, but cool for immersion and models and motion. Anytime we can get motion in Minecraft, I'm for it.
Yeah, like there's two things I can imagine chains being used for, and like you said, it's the fixed length of the radius that something can operate in if it is chained to something, but it's also automation. It's like the movable nature of chains as a block, potentially leading to them being used to move entities around. You could imagine like, bringing a chest boat into harbor and having it actually winched up onto the side automatically by chains, or something like that. The removal of pistons being the only thing that can be used to push or pull blocks around would be kind of interesting for the future of Minecraft in general. But going back to the original idea here, I can see why Jedidu had the idea of chains being linked specifically to Ravagers, because if you look at the texture of a Ravager, it seems like there are chains dangling from some of the like leg caps that they're wearing, right? So it seems like maybe they've been chained up at some stage already, or this is just the pillagers' way of like applying a harness to them so that they can be rode. But I think it's really interesting that that's already part of the Ravager texture and could therefore imply some connection between Ravagers and being controlled in some way. But that's exclusive to pillagers and not to us right now. And I do think that the better option would probably be to tame and ride Ravagers rather than making all hostile mobs leashable or chainable, right? Like you, I think chaining up a mob does remove the threat, perhaps oversimplifies the challenge of moving or containing hostile mobs. There are a few ways that we already have precedent for that kind of thing, though. You think about how easy it is to put a mob in a boat or a minecart when you're panicking and running and, trapping an enderman there to make sure it doesn't chase you. And there are a lot of techniques like that players already employ that feel like unintended but, useful mechanics, in the same way that, Mojang could implement a chain and have that be the intended way of interacting with players, but the risk-reward balance of actually you can put any entity in a boat, but you have to know that that's a thing and you have to be able to deploy it in panicked situations and that kind of thing. I think maybe there's a certain amount of emergent gameplay idea behind that they think, well, that's probably worth keeping in the game versus codifying it through something like being able to leash every mob possible. So yeah, I think with the exception of certain advancements, it doesn't really feel like harnessing every mob like that is really part of Minecraft's intended gameplay, and you're meant to be struggling to find ways, or asked to find more inventive and creative ways of moving some of the hostile mobs around when vanilla mobs can mostly be led. It obviously also You have to include villagers, which are one of the only passive or neutral mobs that can't be leashed right now. And if you can apply a general leashing behavior to a lot of other mobs, villagers become the exception, or you have to lump them in there, and we get into some very uncomfortable imagery regarding how people treat villagers. So, there's a fine line to be walked there, and I think that's probably why they're straying away from allowing players to leash or control a great deal of other mobs in the process.
Yeah, right now it's only domestic animals like farm animals and things like that. And I think maybe can you leash cats? No, you for cats and wolves you have to bait them, right? You can't really.
I think for the cats you have to tame them first and then they can be led around, or they have following mechanics at that point anyway, so it's kind of negligible whether you need them. But yeah, there's a few that have special lead behaviors like llamas and things like that, but aside from that, the majority of the domesticated animals can be led. I think like frogs and things as well, some of the smaller things that are largely passive. And then foxes, which will run away from the player, but you can get them on a lead if you want to move them around. So there's a mix of stuff out there right now, but I think it's probably for the best that you can't leash a creeper. Let's put it that way.
And things like fish in buckets make sense. Like you're not going to leash a fish. Like you're going to put it in a bucket instead, right? So I'm kind of curious as to why we don't put frogs in buckets. Like they're a little bit bigger than a fish, but not quite. So it's a weird kind of in between.
You can't stop them hopping out of the bucket is the problem. That's why you can only carry them while they're a tadpole. having had some experience trying to wrangle frogs in the past, and crabs too. Like it's very difficult to keep them in the bucket if they want to escape. But moving on to our main discussion topic for this week, this comes from an email as well, but we're going to work it into a larger discussion topic because it concerns, once again, the Minecraft movie. But Rush C has written in with the subject of the potential of a Minecraft movie. Hello, Jonny and Joel. After watching a Minecraft movie myself, I can say that while it is utterly ridiculous, it presented a question that I'm sure many Minecraft fans are wondering about. Would any of the quote-unquote new features seen throughout the movie be applicable to the vanilla game? I have been wanting a new golem in the game for a long time, and the Swift Golem is actually really interesting, a unique take on our buildable friends. Things like the actual Boots of Swiftness and the Orb of Dominance from Minecraft Dungeons, and more sorcery would be great for a future combat-themed drop. And if the Nether gets another update later on, I would love to see things like different piglin classes, or the ability to tame and ride hoglins like the hog riders in the movie. Would love to hear what you guys think. Rush C made the advancement Fast and Ferrous when they constructed their first Swift Golem, Piglins Beware.
I really enjoyed the pun in that advancement.
Yes.
Well done.
It's about family. Well, it's about family. So the goal here is to have a discussion about what Minecraft itself could steal or borrow or just use, because they are from the same people in theory, from a Minecraft movie. And there is a surprising amount, even though the Minecraft movie skews fairly faithful to some of the mechanics of and the world of vanilla Minecraft as we know it, there are also a lot of things that diverge from Minecraft as a game experience. And so we wanted to chat a little bit about some of those. Is there anything from a Minecraft movie that could make it into vanilla Minecraft, theoretically? Is there some stuff that is just a pipe dream and it would be cool, but probably unlikely? Let's crack this open and see what we can make of it.
So I wanted to address some of the things that Rush brought up in their email first. Boots of Swiftness and the Orb of Dominance are really good candidates, I think. Boots of Swiftness reinvigorates the conversation about wanting something from Minecraft Dungeons to come into Minecraft. I think there's a lot of overlap and potential there. We've talked about that on the show before when Minecraft Dungeons first came out. And you could do this with a resource pack for boots that have like a swiftness enchantment on them right now. If you wanted to kind of like live your Minecraft movie dreams, you could have a little bit of that flavor in there. But the Orb of Dominance was the one that really caught my attention. And I felt that it would be a good way to expand adventures in the Nether. And that trickled down into, I think it goes hand in hand with Malgotia. I think it could be something that could help bolster piglin ranks. They've sort of done that with piglin brutes, but like they don't look that different. And other than just being harder, like there's not a lot of different game mechanics that go into dealing with piglin brutes.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that some of the archetypes that they had in a Minecraft movie with like the little piglins, the full size ones, the really big ones, like Chungus and some of the other guys were a lot larger than your average piglin. And then they got even bigger. and there was like the piglin beast, I think they called it, where it had to have the brain finished before they could unleash it. Like that kind of stuff could really increase the playability and adventure in the Nether. Now, I don't know what you do with the Orb of Dominance. I don't know whether you give that to the player as a reward, and is it useful, or is it just a trophy? You know, like, hey, I did it. I went and I faced Malgosha, and now I have the Orb of Dominance to display in my base, just like a dragon head from the end, right? No magical powers, no OP, no aspect of it. But I feel like that would probably met with some friction. Like if you're going to add the Orb of Dominance to Minecraft and it doesn't do anything, it's going to be a little disappointing.
Sure.
So that's where kind of like, I think that a bulk of what Rush said in the email could be implemented. And I feel like even with the Minecraft movie DLC for Bedrock in the marketplace, like there is a series of different models, piglins with spears. There's the bigger ones. They have chains on them. The animations were different too. Like I've only seen it in a YouTube video, but like they really felt much different than the piglins that we see currently roaming around in the Nether in Java Edition. So I feel like an overhaul in that way, inspiring the Nether and that piglin culture we got from the film, I think could be really cool in vanilla Minecraft.
Yeah, I agree. I think the difficulty would be adapting different types of piglins, especially the larger ones, to existing piglin environments and structures, because there are certainly a lot of places around a bastion remnant where there's only a 1 block wide corridor, and if you make larger piglins, say like a 2x2 hitbox or something closer to an iron golem, they're going to have difficulty getting around those structures. The larger like treasure bastions, or maybe some of the areas in like a hoglin stables, you could imagine them being confined to a specific area and still working quite well if they spawned within the structure. But the reason piglin brutes are so scary is because they're the same size as regular piglins but deal so much more damage on Java Edition, so they'll run after you in whatever area a piglin can. But I think there's definitely room for a bit more diversity in piglin culture. You saw a lot of that in Minecraft Legends as well, with ones that could throw like warped fungus potion bottles at you as like a projectile, and that caused like an area of effect damage, sort of similar to a splash potion or a lingering potion. You could have some stuff like that, and I think they could go into the idea of the piglins being brewers, because they already have things like fire resistance potions they can barter to the player. So I like the idea of them having a slightly more sophisticated culture in terms of brewing ingredients and potions and that kind of stuff. There's room for that, certainly, and it would bring it more in line with the piglins that we see in Minecraft Legends, even to a certain extent in the Nether update for Minecraft Dungeons, because the potion flinging piglins were part of that as well. I think they had mushrooms as projectiles, and there was even a little bit of a shared DNA with the piglins who could survive in the overworld without zombifying. They brought like a warped fungus remedy or something, or like a nether wart remedy in the movie that allowed them to not zombify, and you had a couple of piglin merchants stationed in the overworld when the Nether update to Dungeons came in, which allowed you to buy items from them or trade items for gold that you would get for doing missions in the Nether. So there's like a little bit of synergy there going on. It's part of Minecraft's broader lore already. It's just not something that's in the vanilla game super clearly. So it would be very interesting to do that, potentially even be able to bring some piglins to barter with us in the overworld without them automatically zombifying. More player control over that would really bring it in line with the way piglins are presented in the Minecraft movie.
And I feel like with those bigger piglin ideas, even if the rule was it spawns outside of the bastion, as in like a guard or like a troll boss-like character on a drawbridge or on a bridge to a piglin bastion, I'm not sure what that would do for speedrunners. I mean, I think it would be an obstacle that would maybe add some time, but that I think could be a fun experience too. I was also looking at some of the more practical things, and this is kind of low-hanging fruit because we've seen some of this actually happening in experimental already, but the minecart speeds in the movie are way different than what you get in real life, to make it exciting and to make it a more fun chase and situation in the film. But I also thought it was cool in terms of like how dramatic the accelerator rails were, the activator rails, powered rails, and how there was more than one player or more than one person in the minecart at a time too, which is different than the film. I don't know whether you change existing minecarts or whether you add another minecart to Minecraft to say like, well, this is a single player minecart and this is a double, like it's just twice as long, that kind of idea. I'm not sure whether that really works in terms of a model design. As it stands now, it's a little bit funny, like your legs kind of poke out of a minecart when you're in it. So I would want them to do something different in terms of how the player appears when in a model. I'd be totally fine if my legs were just like not visible. Like imagine they're tucked up inside of it. I don't need to be sitting down like I'm in a chair. I feel like you could probably just, imagine me kind of like squatting in a minecart, and that would be fine. But I do like the idea of getting some speed back to minecarts, not just for the player, but for things that are in them, and I don't know what that does in terms of the code. They're obviously meshing with some stuff now and experimental, but I did like that dynamic. Also the comedy of it, like to see something that looks like it's Stone Age or Iron Age kind of like technology, then it hits redstone and it's like blow your hair back speed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's some fun there, and I think that would be something that we could bring into Minecraft for sure.
Yeah, I have wanted them to update minecarts for a little while, and we sort of got close with the notion of leashing entities together recently. A lot of people have already been designing like trains that allow you to move around as long as there are mobs as passengers in some situations, and like there's some really interesting stuff maybe there. So I do wonder if they're looking at minecarts behind the scenes, especially with the reintroduction of other forms of transport, like with happy ghasts and everything. Maybe they're considering overhauling minecarts a little bit as well. But I think with any update to minecarts also still comes the problems of a lot of machines, a lot of, contraptions that we have already being built around the way minecarts behave now. So it would have to be either an addition or it'd have to be a really slow rollout with conversations with the community happening so that they could make sure that they didn't upset the minecart. They didn't upset like the amount of players who already use hopper minecarts to distribute stuff around furnaces or storage systems or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, while the idea is certainly appealing, and I think the minecart does deserve a little bit more love for how central it is to the game, I think it's a difficult thing to implement without changing them dramatically and then potentially changing a lot of the ways that players already use them.
I don't remember from the movie, but did they go around any corners, or was it basically a straight line?
I mostly remember it being straight lines, but I could also be just focusing on the bits that I remember from like the trailers and the imagery that's really stuck with me of them going across bridges and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a couple of things off the top of my head. Like, what from the Minecraft movie grabs you as far as Minecraft potential?
See, I had one main thought when this came up as a discussion topic, and it's the fact that the absolute pipe dream, but possibly also the death of Minecraft as we know it, comes to the approach to custom crafting that we see in the movie. So Henry, at one point, basically invents a crafting recipe on the fly. Some of the objects he uses aren't even from the overworld of Minecraft, they're from the real world. He has like a 9-volt battery in his pocket and stuff like that, and like a stick of chewing gum or something. I forget exactly what he uses, but he throws it all on the crafting table and it makes a musket that shoots tater tots. It's very in the tone of the movie. But then from the clips that were shared before the movie even came out, you saw Jason Momoa's character Garrett putting a miscellaneous handful of iron on the table, not even putting them inside the squares of the crafting table itself, but then taps it with the hammer and it becomes a pair of buckets linked with a chain. Nobody fails a crafting recipe in this movie. Like, anything that they can throw in there and whatever they're imagining becomes a crafting recipe. They are never told they can't make something. There isn't a scene where they tap it and Jack Black's like, no, you got to do it like this. The whole idea behind the movie is that your imagination can conjure whatever. And so I was thinking what it would take for a similar approach in vanilla Minecraft. And I think it's mathematically impossible for a start. I think in terms of what Minecraft would have to do, it would need to change so fundamentally that it wouldn't really be the same game anymore. There isn't scope for what I think is over 1,000 items at this point to be combined 9 different ways with every other item, thinking about the 9 different slots of a crafter, much less, 2x2 crafting recipes and things like that. But the notion that everything in the game could be combined with every other thing and that there would be no wrong crafting recipes fundamentally changes the way we have to look at the game. Not just because of, it'd be virtually impossible to balance depending on what it was able to make, but people's intent being different, because the imagination of the characters in the movie is what's driving the crafting process, and what Henry imagines when he puts together this potato-firing musket is not necessarily what another person might imagine if they did the same thing. But let's say it was possible to codify everyone's going to get the same result out of whatever combination of ingredients they throw in there. We think that maybe, 3 planks on either side and then like a flower in the middle and then 2 iron ingots either side could be like a little flower in a cage of some kind. I don't know, like a little kind of ornamental thing. Do that probably like 900 million times, and that's probably more data than you can store in a computer. So, with today's technology, you can imagine it being treated similarly to how the game Infinite Craft works. And I haven't tinkered with this much myself. I've seen people playing it on stream a little while ago when it was relatively new. But the game takes a large language model and allows you to combine different elements, and it can effectively become like one of those 20 questions games where you try really hard to get it to create a concept that you're thinking of. And with the alchemy of adding different elements together, you add water and earth together, it gives you plant. You add plant and fire together, and it gives you ashes. You put ashes and water together, it gives you mud, that kind of stuff, right? Like, imagine something like that, but implemented in Minecraft. You'd have to have a consistent output, so it would need to be trained in some way, but it would need to be trained not just to produce intuitive crafting recipes, but also the items they output, uses for those items, item sprites, and how they would appear in the player's hands. So obviously this leads to the erosion of not just the gameplay balance, because you could imagine, something that makes a super powerful sword because you're just adding diamonds and netherite and all of that stuff together into the same pot. You could also have it lead to effectively the erosion of the traditional gameplay loop, because as soon as you have some ingredients, the alchemy of it allows you to craft basically whatever the constraints of the large language model let you do. And beyond that, any kind of boundaries Minecraft sets for player creativity go out of the window as well, because suddenly you can make everything out of everything. And it goes back to the Minecraft team's philosophy that this minimalistic approach and not allowing players to make absolutely everything into, like, you can't have stone bookshelves right now, for example, because they want all of the bookshelves to be made out of wood and look exactly the same way. It took a while before we even got fences and slabs and stairs of a lot of different materials, and some of those are still missing from the block palette because the team thinks that it's better for players to have limitations to work around and that those inspire creativity. Weirdly, the message of the Minecraft movie is the opposite. It's that whatever imagination you can bring to the table, you should be able to make that. And so I think that's one of the reasons that the Minecraft movie felt a little strange to me in its approach, but I cannot imagine a world in which the infinite crafting mechanic ever gets added to Minecraft. What would be interesting is a broadening of crafting into a system that can have varied results, and results that require a little bit more player input and player ingenuity beyond just memorizing the crafting recipes that are currently existent in the game. A level of alchemy involved in the crafting process instead of a strict recipe book. I don't know how it would work. In other words, I think it would be the perfect April Fool's update. They've already done this with Dimensions, where they had, like, a portal you could go through for, a world that was made out of diamond blocks and the sky was dotted with emeralds and that kind of stuff. Like, they've done bits and pieces with taking Minecraft as an engine and using it for different gameplay concepts. I would like to see them attempt something like this, but given the team's focus on curation of the way the game works, I can't imagine them entrusting something as big as Minecraft to AI processes and large language models and that kind of stuff.
Or the internet at large, right?
Yeah,
like,
true.
If you put that out on April Fools, I mean, like, you've got seconds before people start making inappropriate stuff, right?
Of course, yeah.
I was actually really surprised, even though it was a tater tot gun. I was really surprised that it was a gun in Minecraft. Like,
Yeah.
I thought that what Henry was going to craft was going to be a tool as opposed to a weapon.
Like a grappling hook of some kind or whatever.
Yeah,
like a slingshot kind of
something.
thing. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be something different than that. And I, at the very least, if it was going to go in that way, like I thought maybe like an explosive or like something TNT related, because that's something that I think a lot of young people enjoy about Minecraft is blowing stuff up because it is kind of fun. But yeah, like I've always rolled my eyes at, the mods that I see out there where it's like add guns to Minecraft. It's like the whole point for me of Minecraft is to not have guns. Like it's one of the, not that I don't mind guns in video games. I love Borderlands, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I don't go to Minecraft for it. And so, I feel like entrusting that to like an LLM or something would be risky for sure. But I like that idea. Like I like the idea of there being more to craft than just what the recipe book tells you, just what Minecraft spoon feeds you. And even if it doesn't work, like even if it's like, well, we'll use tables and chairs as an example. You're talking about how no one fails in the Minecraft movie to craft something. Well, what if I crafted a table and it only gave me like 3 legs or 2 legs or something and it fell over, right? Like it worked. Is it useful? Not really. Right. So like it could be a really interesting lesson in terms of how things are built. I mean, it would require, I guess, more of a physics engine, in terms of like things falling over and that kind of stuff that you see in other games. But that could be really interesting. Like it would be really fun from an educational standpoint. Like Redstone already teaches, young people how to code, and it's used in educational stuff. Minecraft in general is used in education all the time. But to take that and then like use it for like really intricate, more real world things. And I guess that's what would happen is that in order to let everybody craft stuff like that in Minecraft, you'd have to allow, well, I guess you wouldn't have to. I guess you could put some restrictions and saying like, look, don't build these kinds of things from the real world. Like you have to eliminate some stuff in the same way that, you and I have got chat bots in our chat rooms that block terms and flag different phrases and things. Like I feel like it could be there, but I think it would also it would come under a lot of moderation and scrutiny and stuff like that. It's a cool idea though. And I like the idea of having like, even just something where it expands the crafting 3x3 grid to like 4x4, 5x5. Like, what could you do to, increase the complexity of the things that you want to build? And even if it's not something that you can place in the game, like what if it's like a tool or something that you could then use to do other things or expedite other processes, quality of life stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the 3x3 crafting for now makes sense because 3x3 I think gives you enough area to experiment without it being too frustrating when you don't get any results.
Right.
Because, with a 4x4 crafting grid, I can imagine you taking absolutely ages trying different combinations of stuff before it ever came up with like a reasonable recipe. I think the problem with the infinite crafting idea is that player intent has to play such a role in them getting results. Because, what the game would interpret is not necessarily what the player handling the game would interpret. And so the way it might work a little bit more successfully, if not necessarily in the spirit of Minecraft, is to have something like a search bar or a text field where somebody could write, I want to make a winch, let's say. They'd write winch in there, and then maybe the game would suggest a couple of ingredients, and they'd put it in the crafting table a couple of different ways, and maybe the game would give them like a few opportunities to try what a winch could be made out of before it would accept a crafting recipe for it, or something along those lines. And so that maybe gets around the problem of them having to store infinite amounts of crafting recipes, but still, like, it is player-driven crafting in the same way that the movie has it, but recipe-driven crafting and like conforming to the rules of what Minecraft gives you right now is one of the things that has made it a successful game, I think, because otherwise it can go off the rails far too quickly and feels directionless if you can make anything. It's sort of like the blank canvas problem of this could be absolutely anything, so I don't really know where to start. I'd be really curious to see how that worked, if it were even possible from a technological perspective. But that was really the main thing that came across to me about the movie, was so different from the world of Minecraft, was the way they crafted stuff and how it was possible to invent anything as long as you had the imagination for it.
One of the things that I thought was really good about the movie, and we talked about this in our review, which is the consistency of the visuals and the way that everything looks. When you're in the overworld in the Nether, everything is consistently weird looking. And I thought that bringing some of that into Minecraft could be really, really cool. There's already some resource packs out there that will make a sheep or a wolf or the Nether portal look like the things that you've seen in game. The Nether portal one that I found was basically just a retexture of the purple portal into something blue. But I really liked how they handled the portals in the Minecraft movie. It was a much more detailed, nuanced animation. It had some depth to it. And I feel like adding some stuff like that to Minecraft could be, it's this kind of like delicate kind of back and forth between like, could Mojang add more detailed portals and more interesting animations? Yes. But is it better to leave that up to the community to come up with resource packs and texture packs to do that? Rather than trying to please everyone, they can just let people that want to make it, and then see if anybody else uses it. So resource packs and getting Minecraft to look like a Minecraft movie, I think is something that would be very cool to see from Mojang, but unlikely because of the community and the modding community and the texture pack, resource pack community. I still think it would be interesting to feel like go into a world in game in Minecraft and have things look like they did in the film. I don't think that we'd be able to do anything with that level of fidelity and obviously that kind of CG rendered for movie, but just the idea, like the design of the sheep is very different than what we see in game. You know, in terms of like if you took that and you made it into a little pixel cartoon, it's still going to look very different than the sheep we actually have right now. And same thing with the villagers, like they had eyes and mouths and different expressions and things like that. And I feel like even the iron golems, the way that they moved and stuff like that, I think you could do some really interesting things like that. I'm curious actually, with the advent of vibrant visuals, are iron golems going to be shiny, reflective? You know, when we see them in game, like the sun kind of bouncing off them, that kind of stuff. So there's some things that we might start to see coming into the game, but I think resource packs would be one that would be a lot of fun, but would open up a can of worms. And I don't think we're going to see Mojang tackle it for vanilla Minecraft, but I could see the modding community and the resource pack community coming up with some really cool stuff.
There was, I believe, a DLC add-on for the Minecraft movie in Bedrock Edition, like on the marketplace. I'm pretty sure there was something like that maybe added in a few fun items like the bucket nunchucks and things like that, and had a resource pack that changed the visuals to be a little bit more cartoony and bright, but nowhere near the kind of like rounded block corners aesthetic that the movie had. And like it all has to still operate within the framework of Minecraft as a video game rather than approaching the level of visual fidelity that you get from something like a movie with the realistic sets and stuff. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to see a much more detailed take on the visuals of the Minecraft movie in the way that people have modded Minecraft in the past to have not just photorealistic textures and bumped mapped shader textures and that kind of stuff, but people have even modded Minecraft so that the landscape breaks away from the cubic grid pattern altogether and smooths everything out, and caves look really weird. It's like caves should look more realistic, but they look somehow like uncanny by trying to bridge the gap between real-world physics and Minecraft physics. So it would be curious to see if anybody was interested in tackling that and had as much of an affinity for the visual style of the Minecraft movie as that they wanted to try and mod that into, say, Java Minecraft to get a more complete vision of it.
I remember back when you were playing Pixark and making videos of that game, and I do remember feeling that uncanny vibe of like walking around and seeing like the landscape being pixelated but being very gradual. Like it wasn't as chunky as Minecraft, and like having spent so much time in Minecraft, I just felt like it's familiar but unfamiliar all at the same time. It was an odd experience. But it's funny that you bring up like everything having like rounded or the square corners, but like that soft look sort of vibe. And that was one thing that I thought would be on my list that might actually make it. I think it's possible. I just don't know where they would draw the line as to what they would choose to do this with and what to not do this with. And that is to have some items in the game be able to be placed in the world, like the potatoes and the melons that we saw in the village. And being able to place potatoes or melons on a table in Minecraft and have them look like potatoes and melons, as opposed to a flat sprite that you have to put in a item frame.
Yeah.
Someone that's just been walking around his town putting stuff on tables. The only thing I can really put on tables is candles and flower pots. Everything else I have to do like an armor stand data pack kind of trickery to get that done. Same thing with mini blocks, the player head type things. It's all a data pack. It's not part of vanilla. And so it would be really cool to put potatoes or melons down on a table, as well as other stuff in the game too, pies, loaf of bread, and especially if they worked similar to candles or sea pickles. So 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4, that kind of thing. Like you want a bushel of potatoes on a table, put all 4 of them on a surface. You want just one? Well, it'll just look like one baked potato or one just single potato. And so that could be really fun because you could also have that weird kind of like Minecraft take on what these are supposed to look like. Like, what does a carrot look like? Does it look like a paper towel roll that's orange? Is it just going to be something that looks like a cube? Like, does it look like a torch on its side? Like, there's things like that I would see being a little bit difficult. I have seen that in some mod packs where they've added, like, vegetables have more of a 3D texture and things like that. And sometimes the texture packs don't work that well because they have a higher resolution than 16 bits, and so it starts to feel like it doesn't belong. And so there's a delicate balance there. But there's a couple of things I feel like in Minecraft that could be really fun. Like you go through all the trouble of making something like a pumpkin pie or something like that in Minecraft, and cake works. Like, cake is something that you can put down in Minecraft, but then the pie is just this really strange kind of flat sprite. And it would be very funny if the pie was also square. Like, it wasn't actually a round pie. It was just like very similar to the cake, right? I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think the current issue with that is probably just one of gameplay usage. Like, if you, let's say, to take the Steve's lava chicken example, right? If you're able to place a roast chicken on a block, on like the top face of a surface, then you've got to account for all of the times that players are going to be looking down at the ground while they're eating their chicken. And do they eat the chicken or do they place the chicken? How do you decide between the two outcomes? Even if you're like crouching, so you shift click to place the chicken, players are going to be habitually crouching, or, in the case of the new Locator Bar, maybe they're crouching so they're not detected by people in their environment and that kind of thing. Right. So like there's a potential there for players to rub up against, and for there to be some friction between wanting to place food in the environment and being able to eat food. The whole point with cake is that you have to place it in the environment in order to consume it. You can't just eat a whole cake from your hand. And so, yeah, that's where the difficulty lies. Having said that, entirely agree. I would love to be able to place a roast chicken on a table and have it be the centerpiece of like a dining table in a medieval hall build or something like that. Like, that would definitely be something I'd be interested in, and the movie has plenty of opportunity to show stuff like that. So I think there's room for it in vanilla Minecraft somehow, depending on how that works out. That's food for thought for us, at least. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Spawn Chunks there, but of course, if you have any suggestions for stuff that you think would be great from the Minecraft movie into the real game as we're thinking of it, then write in. It'd be great to hear from you folks. In the meantime, you can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today over at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me. The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, consider putting some value back in. You can do that at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Pledging at any of the paid tiers gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat. You can listen to the show live when we record it in Discord every Monday. We also have our monthly hangouts, one of which we just had last weekend. We've got a quarterly hangout coming up in May. You can hear all the behind-the-scenes facts and figures of the podcast, and the monthly hangouts is where you can share what you've been up to in Minecraft that month. So there's lots going on for patrons. There are 289 patrons on the roster right now, which is up 1 from last week, but there is always room for more. And special thanks go out to our content engineer patrons who help make this show possible. That's Hunter555, Jumbo Sale, Mindtrip Media, Party Voyager, and Yitz. Thank you all for your support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at The Spawn Chunks on social media. New episodes come out on Mondays across your favorite podcasting platforms. Of course, there is a video version available on YouTube. Email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. The RSS feed is linked on the spawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the Render Distance, the extended version of the pod.
My name is Jonny, but online I go by Pixelriffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixelriffs, where the Minecraft Survival Guide is currently on hiatus as I explore Craft Mine and the Minecraft Misadventures SMP. We'll be back to Survival Guide at some point in the near future. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch when I can, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, every other Sunday, give or take, doing behind-the-scenes work for my YouTube series. You'll be finding me running the Lost Crypt a whole lot on Misadventures as I try and get that skeleton dog mount. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. Aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on Blue Sky and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I'm doing online is at joelduggan.com. That includes a link to the Citadel Cafe, my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. This past week, we talked about Daredevil Born Again and a little bit more about a Minecraft movie. And coming up in May, we're going to be talking about May the 4th, which is, of course, today is Star Wars Day. There's going to be some new Star Wars Lego coming out and a lot of the new announcements coming out of Star Wars Celebration. So if you're a Star Wars nerd, you might want to check out the Citadel Cafe in the coming weeks. I'm Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream Tuesday through Saturday. Right now, it's a lot of Satisfactory, and hey, we've got diamonds in Satisfactory now. It only took me 1,300 hours. And we are also working on West Hill in Minecraft, so tune in.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, but thank goodness crafting isn't.